Tennis Australia boss Craig Tiley says he expects there will be boycotts of the Australian Open after Novak Djokovic was granted permission to play. The 20-time Grand Slam winner will defend his title at Melbourne Park after confirming his COVID vaccination exemption in a post to his Instagram last night. There has been a backlash from the public this morning, but Tennis Australia and Victorian Minister Jala Pulford insist the decision has been approached fairly.
So the process has been very clear, and we completely understand and empathise with first of all, some people being upset about the fact that Novak has come in because of his statements over the past couple of years around vaccination. However, it's ultimately up to him to discuss with the public his condition if he chooses to do that and the reason why he received an exemption. We as an event, also as a state and as a country, will do everything we possibly can to give everyone an equal and fair opportunity to come into the country. And if they come in through the guidelines that are set forth and the conditions of which they can compete, then they're granted with an exemption. The majority of players and the majority of people on site are vaccinated because, again, to come into the grounds and all our patrons coming in, the critical workforce, the players coming in will have to show through the QR code, will have to show the services, through the Services Vic app, will have to show the green tick. And you also get that green tick if you're medically exempt.
No one is or will be receiving special treatment because of who they are or what they have achieved professionally. That our overarching imperative through the pandemic now for 2 years, and in relation to the hosting of all our big events, including in this instance the Australian Open, has been the safety of the Victorian community, the health and well-being of the Victorian community. And so for participants, whether they're players, the workforce, those attending to watch a great match, the overarching imperative here is to ensure the safety of all people.
Sport reporter Tom Maddox has more on the Djokovic situation.
Clear what Novak Djokovic's medical condition is exactly. Remains to be seen whether he will reveal that to the public when he touches down in Australia sometime today. But what is clear, according to Tennis Australia and the Victorian government there, is that based on not one but two independent medical experts reviewing the application from Novak Djokovic, is that Novak Djokovic has satisfied one or more of the criteria required to be granted a medical exemption. And that is, if you weren't listening to that press conference, roughly the criteria is that if you have an adverse response to a vaccine, you've just had major surgery, or you're indeed a recovered case of COVID-19. So both the acting sports minister Jala Pulford and Craig Tiley, the Tennis Australia head, were at pains to stress that this has been a more robust and rigorous process than an ordinary Australian would have to undergo to get a medical exemption. And they did say that some 26 people, so athletes that is, and support staff that were hoping to get to the Australian Open applied for these exemptions, and only a handful were granted them. And indeed, Novak Djokovic is among them.
And Tom, what has been the reaction to the news that Novak will play in Melbourne?
Well, Kirsten, we were just playing an excerpt of the press conference with the New South Wales Premier Dominic Perrottet, who was acknowledging the concerns across the state about the long lines to get tested, and indeed the surge in COVID-19 cases. So at the same time as thousands of Australians line up this morning to get tested, they hear the news when they wake up that Novak Djokovic has been granted a medical exemption to play in this month's Australian Open here at Melbourne Park. So I'm sure the reaction so far from the public has been swift and quite furious. The federal opposition leader, Anthony Albanese, he's already responded and said that he hasn't heard a satisfactory explanation as to why Novak Djokovic has been granted this medical exemption. Players have already responded as well, even though they're playing a bit more of a straight bat. But I'm sure when Novak Djokovic touches down later today, he'll face some intense media and indeed public scrutiny.